Hello, welcome to the Millionaire Woman Show, where we'll be discussing leadership, business, and human potential, inspiring you to live rich from the inside out. Unlock your creativity, stretch out of your comfort zone, break through your barriers, take inspired action, and achieve epic results. Now, here's your host, two-time best-selling author, speaker, and certified executive coach, Deborah Kasowski.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Millionaire Woman Show, where we talk about leadership, business, and human potential. And today, I am super excited to share with you our special guest, voted as one of 10 best doctors in North Carolina in 2017. C. Nicole Swiner, MD, aka Doc Swiner, is a family physician, two-time best-selling author, three-time best-selling publisher, national speaker, wife, and mom of two. She's loves taking care of family as a whole from the cradle to the grave. And her medical interests include minority health, women's health, and pediatrics. For her undergraduate education, she attended Duke University and went to medical school in the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston, South Carolina. She lived in the Triangle since finishing residency at the UNC Chapel Hill and is co-owner of Durham Family Medicine. And she continues teaching at UNC medical students and residents as an adjunct associate professor. Her first book, How to Avoid the Superwoman Complex, discusses the false belief that one person can be all things to all people perfectly. It can be have devastating effects, emotional, mental, and physical. She hopes this book will serve as a guide for recovering superwomen and supermen everywhere to avoid the negative effects and to make it a little easier and less stressful to take care of oneself and family. Her second book, released in August of 2016, The Superwoman Complex, A Follow-Up Visit, is an international bestseller and takes a more in-depth look to how we fix the issues identified and defined in her first book. And her third book, first collaborative one, is also an Amazon bestseller, Thinking About Quitting Medicine. It is a story of 13 doctors and clinicians that strive to succeed in passions both within and outside the practice of medicine. Since 2009, she's been speaking locally and nationally for organizations, groups, high schools, and universities about stress management, health matters, and self-care. She does weekly broadcasts online on Periscope with Paragirls TV that are interactive and live. She enjoys helping others, doing events, and in a Q&A format to allow people to ask questions that they may be afraid to ask anyone else. And along with speaking and teaching, she's added publisher, self-publishing consultant to her list of duties as friends and colleagues around her became inspired to write and publish themselves. She published the above-mentioned 3 books through this company, through Swiner Publishing Company, and she serves as a liaison and accountability partner for those wanting to follow in her footsteps to begin a new career in book writing, marketing, social media broadcasting, and speaking. In January 2016, she launched her inaugural Women's Health Conference called New Year, New You, and hosted and sold out a crowd filled with 20 vendors, live music, over 14 speakers, 2 panel discussions, and giveaways. She plans to hold this annually on Duke's campus. She can be contacted, and all other information you can find on www.docswiner.com. Without further ado, all the list of accolades, you are an amazing woman. Thank you for joining us, Doc Swiner.
Thank you for having me. I need to shorten that bio.
Well, it gives us a full picture. So I'm really excited to learn more about the work that you're doing, because you are doing some amazing things, inspiring a lot of women and men, because we have men listening to our show as well. Mm-hmm. And I know that sometimes we don't know if we make a difference. And, you know, many of us have heard the phrase that if you want to get something done, you give it to the busiest person. And it seems logical. They're getting everything else done. But what makes it detrimental for people to do that?
hmm Or even, as I've heard, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Um, it, I don't know, particularly for women, women that were born, particularly within the last, 50 to 60 years, we've been told and encouraged and motivated that, you can have it all, you can do it all. The picture with, the the lady in the scarf with her bicep, showing the strength of women. I think that's wonderful. But what we have to do is learn balance. We're owning companies and we're raising children and we're getting married and divorced and married again, and taking care of our elder parents and all these other people that need us. But then at the end of the day, we forget that we have to take care of ourselves. So it becomes detrimental in very silent and subtle ways, and in very major ways. And then as a family doctor, I end up seeing these folks in the office for different medical conditions that are likely due to being, too stressed out and stretched thin.
Yeah. And do you find a lot of the, and viruses and bacteria, of course, there's no control over that. But when it comes to illnesses, do you find that many are related to stress?
Absolutely. The large majority. I mean, some of that, like you're saying, you get exposed and you can't help that. We're shaking hands and coughing and sneezing on one another all day long, especially if you have kids like me. But yes, when you're extra stressed, your immune system definitely goes down, and then you become more susceptible to common colds and other, infections that you may not necessarily get if your immune system was at baseline.
Yeah. And I know what you do is about the Superwoman Complex, but I'm just curious with this Wonder Woman movie coming out, because I'm a self-proclaimed, since I was in grade 1, I wanted to be Wonder Woman.
Me too. In kindergarten, I certainly did.
Yeah. So what is it about being Wonder Woman or man that we have listened to the podcast? What makes it so mesmerizing?
I don't know. I think it's the strength and the independence that comes with that caricature. I mean, she defeats all man, woman, monster, principality, whatever. She is the strong, powerful woman character that we all, I think, we're drawn to, because, I think she has the alter ego, right? Where she's just kind of a regular lady doing her thing on most days. But then when she's called to act, she's ready to act, jump, fly, punch, wrestle, do whatever she needs to get the job done. And I think we're all drawn to that. We want to have that inner strength to be able to act when we're called upon. And so I think it's, it's a very positive character to lean on.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you wanted to be her too.
I did.
The other thing that I do see when it comes to Wonder Woman, but very much it's the number one thing would be the strength. And I think it's also the courage to face anything that is right in front of you and know that you're going to be able to get through it. I think that's what mesmerizes me is there's this unstoppable powerhouse who can conquer. And I actually ordered myself a new tank top that says muscles initializing and it has her on it. Perfect. So I was like, okay, I can have that alter ego, but most of the time being that everyday person.
Right.
What other qualities drew you to her since a child?
I don't know. The cartoon was huge when I was in preschool and kindergarten, and I think I froze. Can you hear me?
Yep. I can hear you. It'll come back on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
So the cartoon and the TV show was huge when I was in preschool and kindergarten. And I think it was right around Halloween time that I was asked that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so I had my costume on the brain. So I wasn't necessarily thinking about who I wanted to be per se, but what costume I wanted to wear. And it was definitely Wonder Woman at that time. It was probably the most popular female character out. But if I think deeper, then clearly it has something to do with her strength and her courage and her do-it-all-ness that I was drawn to, and I've been drawn to for years. And then, of course, Superwoman has come to light since then, and we've all been drawn to that character for different reasons. But usually it comes back to the strength and the courage that you mentioned.
So tell us about the Superwoman Complex. Why no more?
Right. So if you go back to the 1980s, I actually started reading this book called The Superwoman Syndrome that was written by a female clinician, a psychologist, and forgive me, her name escapes me, but it will come to me. I think his last name is Shakowitz. But she wrote a book called The Superwoman Syndrome in the 1980s, and it drew on the transition of what women have been doing and what we've become since like the 1950s, 1960s, where, you know, the men were out in the field. They were literally here, particularly in America, they were at war, you know, fighting overseas and doing those things. So we almost had no other choice but to step in and do those quote unquote manly things outside of the home, in terms of doing the work and working in warehouses and factories and doing all of that, and then coming home and still having to be mom and wife. So during this time, we started to see in the medical and the psychology world an increase of disorders that we normally didn't see in women, you know, whether it had to do with substance abuse, heart disease, stroke, depression, anxiety, became, you know, much more prevalent in women, whereas in the past, they were a little bit more prevalent in men, or at least 50-50. And it all seemed to come from the link between us having to do more and wear multiple hats. Whereas we were just, you know, in the past, we were essentially homemaker and, you know, barefoot and pregnant, stereotypically. So this whole syndrome and complex came from us feeling like we had to do it all. We had to be perfect in multiple realms to make multiple groups of people happy. And then ultimately, you know, becoming sad, burdened, depressed, stressed out at the end of the day. So that's where it comes from. And I've kind of carried that into the 2000s now with the Superwoman Complex, because it continues. We're more and more successful and thereby more and more stressed out.
Yeah. And it shows up in different ways.
Yes. So I'm a family medicine doctor here in North Carolina, and that's my 9 to 5, my main job. And I see a slew of women who are just like me, you know, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, working, taking care of children, holding down a job, if not more than one, you know, starting their own companies, taking care of their ailing parents, being best friend, girlfriend, sister, etc., and coming in with high blood pressure and high sugars and can't lose weight, can't gain weight, not sleeping enough, sleeping too much. You know, all of these things can be related to the amount of stress and burden that we put on ourselves to perform and be perfect women for all of these people.
I hear myself in there.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be careful. Several years ago, I personally had an event, and my kids were way smaller. My daughter actually is turned 18 today.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. But it was when I think it was my middle one. It was Valentine's Day, and I was determined I had to be a couple, one side of town and the other side of town, to make sure I got everybody to their Valentine's parties and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up having a self-inflicted car accident. I was trying to pull over into a lane, and I couldn't get into the lane, and versus just going around and coming back one more time, I just kept looking over and over, waiting for these guys to give me space, and they weren't going to give me space. And next thing I knew, I hit a road sign.
Oh no.
And I was devastated, because it was a brand new vehicle that we had purchased. And I just sat there and I just cried.
Yeah.
Later that evening, I had phoned my father to tell him what had happened. And first thing he said was, "Deb, do you think you got enough on your plate yet?" And
right.
That's all he said.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have to explain to him what I was doing.
Well, I tell you what, interestingly, my father was the one who kind of brought some of that to my attention as well. So isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That the men in our lives are the ones telling us that we're doing too much. But I just had my first child.
Congratulations.
Well, at this time now I have two. but at the time when my father brought it up to me, you know, so I was working full time as a family doc, had just had my first baby, was back to work after maternity leave, and was, you know, back to the grind and seeing all the patients and doing all the work and coming home and breastfeeding and not sleeping and trying to take care of my husband and all that. And he said, "I want you to read this article." that I just read. I was like, well, okay, who has time to read? But he sent me this article from Newsweek, and it was about women doing too much, and women overstretching themselves and all of this. And he sent it to me just kind of subtly. And I was like, well, what are you saying? Are you saying I'm doing too much? Is this a warning sign that you don't want me to do too much? But he definitely was aware that I could end up being in that category of, just overdoing it. So you got to listen.
Yeah, we have to pay attention. And since then, I've done a better job, but I'm always looking out for new tips and new strategies to ensure that that balance is there, or more so a harmony.
That's right.
So what have you noticed about individuals as they climb the corporate ladder or they're expanding their business reach?
Characteristics, particularly women, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Like what do you see happening? Like all of a sudden they're going exactly where they want to go. Mm-hmm. They're climbing the ladder. The business is getting bigger, and all of a sudden things start to change.
They have less and less time for themselves. There's a book out called Leaning In or Lean In, and it's caused some controversy because it has empowered women, particularly entrepreneurial and highly educated women, to lean in, to become part of the conversation, to invite themselves to the table, have a seat at the table with, corporations and other CEOs, et cetera. But I think it's made it more okay to work yourself to the bone and to stay up late hours and to neglect family time and quality time and personal time to achieve these business goals. And I think it can be dangerous because it's hard. It's already hard to turn your phone off and turn the computer off and not reply to emails and not take home, your work, not take work home with you. But even more so if you're really trying to, reach a certain level and be CEO and CFO and start these new companies and head these businesses, you tend to not leave as much time for exercise and getting good sleep and making sure you're up to date with your physical exams and, getting your mammograms. You leave that stuff out, and that can be dangerous.
Yeah, I can see how that easily happens because you're always shifting your priorities at the moment.
Right.
So do you believe there is such thing as work-life balance?
There is. Now, whether you can achieve it easily or not is the question, but there certainly is. And I've had to, practice what I preach. And so I try to follow my own advice when giving it to others. But I try my best not to have to bring a lot of work home. I used to, particularly when I was a fresh green doctor, I wanted to, make sure all of my notes were up to date before I left. I wanted to make sure all of the phone calls were returned and the labs were looked at and all of that. And I would generally end up bringing my computer home a lot and spending nighttime, sitting next to my husband. So I felt like I was near him and spending quality time, but on the computer, finishing that note, sending that letter, et cetera. And I would do it a couple of nights a week. And it would take away from the time that we were able to spend with one another. It would take away from the time that I was able to get to bed on time and sleep and have a restful night's sleep. So I've had to cut back on that. I've had to learn how to be more efficient during the work day so that I don't have to take that home. Once I had kids, I made the decision to not work every Friday as much as I could help it so that I could be at home, and start the weekend earlier and get home a little earlier so that I could have family time before they have to go to bed. So you have to make those proactive decisions, even during a busy work life. You have to make those personal decisions. You have to schedule in your own exercise time, schedule in your own massage, just like you schedule everyone else's appointments, schedule in your own time to make that work.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I do know that, when you're booking everybody else's things, you're the last one.
Right.
Usually to put that massage for yourself or going for a manicure, pedicure, whatever that is, or lunch with a girlfriend.
That's right.
Yeah. So what tips or strategies do you have for our audience on ensuring that they have the health and wellness on their way to success?
I am huge on sleep. Sleep is a hobby for me. If I could teach a class on sleep, I would. But sleep is number one. We don't realize how important sleep is, how important it is to get that 6 to 8 hours every night. You know, forcing yourself to go to bed on time so that you can feel rested and energized the next morning. So if I, you know, my first tip is always get the rest, you know, turn off the stimulation. I have to force myself to mute my phone, dim the light on the phone, because if I see it flashing, you know, when I turn over at night, I'm compelled to reach for it. Turn it off or dim your lights, mute it. If you can, not watch TV or look at your laptop at least an hour or two before going to bed. That's hard too, especially, you know, there are a lot of great shows and movies that we want to see, but you have to turn it down so your body can relax, and get the rest. Get the rest. So that's number one. And then as a, you know, from a medical standpoint, our blood pressure is better. Our weight is more stable. Our mood is better if we're getting that rest. So you have to do it. You have to do it. That's always my number one. Number two is we have to exercise. This is another thing that I'm working on too. But one of the organizations here in America talks about the average amount of exercise that a healthy person should be getting is about 150 minutes per week. So I don't know, just count that up. Are you getting enough exercise? Not every week, you know, I admit, but we should really be striving for that because it's good for our heart, good for our bones, our joints, our, you know, blood sugar, cholesterol, all those things decrease if you're exercising regularly. And the third and last thing I would do is just make sure that you're having some quiet time, at least once or twice a week. If you can do it every day, that's wonderful, but at least once or twice a week, schedule your own quiet time. Meditate with an app on your phone, you know, stop during lunch and say a quick prayer, go outside. If you can for lunch, you know, get out and have some quiet personal time just to kind of reset your brain cells. So those would be my big three.
Yeah. I think the last one for sure, I think many of us take that for granted, just to have time alone with your own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people also at the same time avoid it because they don't want to be alone with themselves.
That can be dangerous. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, that level of activity or exercise that you talk about, you know, we have this minutes for a week, but people don't realize sometimes that it's just as little. Like I'll go for a lunchtime run and it's that all or nothing thinking. Like if I can't run 5K or if I can't exercise for an hour, what's the point?
Right.
But it's also realizing that there's a compound effect with all of that 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, half an hour here, that 150 minutes can add up quickly.
It adds up. That's right.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be all done in one day.
Mm-hmm.
So how can people develop that resilience muscle during those tough times? Because people have setbacks, kind of hit lows, especially the entrepreneurial, you know, they have the roller coaster. How do you think it's best to help develop that resilience muscle?
Two things that are important for me. One being my faith. You know, everyone has their backgrounds, their different beliefs, but my faith, my Christian faith definitely is one thing that, or probably the biggest thing that I rely on in terms of being able to bounce back, or when I have those setbacks, being able to kind of continue to encourage myself or be encouraged, and knowing that, you know, these times will come, but they will be short-lived. You know, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, to never be hopeless or helpless. So my faith is huge for me. Whether you're Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, etc., you know, drawing on your faith is major. And number two, my support system. You know, I'm blessed to have a phenomenal husband, wonderful children, and I have a tribe, what we like to call a tribe, of, you know, girlfriends and family members that truly support what I'm doing and are always there to give a good and positive word and support, you know, not just by purchasing books and being at events and all that, but sending a text or liking my Instagram post. You know, I always have folks that have my back. And so if you don't have supportive friends, or if you have toxic relationships that you need to get rid of, surrounding yourself with positive, like-minded, supportive people is, you know, probably as important as having faith to draw from in those tough times.
Yeah. It is really important, that support, that encouragement, and faith as well. I know faith is where I draw from personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, without that, sometimes I don't know when people don't have that.
Yeah, you wonder, what do they do? That's right. What do you draw from? That's right.
Yeah. The other thing we were talking about just before we came on the show is the third book about, potentially quitting a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to generalize it for a moment for our audience. So when you have had a career for a long time, or whether it be medical, my background's nursing, that what gets us to the point that we no longer are passionate about what we really thought we wanted to do? And what are some of the things that you talk about in the book that people can realize, like whether they're a business owner, whether they're climbing the corporate ladder, that they might hit that space of, I don't even know if I like this anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's one word: burnout. Burnout. It's, we go to school and we train and we become educated in this field, or, work in this field that, you've dreamt of your entire school life. And then you get there and it's great. It's usually great at first if you're blessed to find a really good job and love the people that you're working around, but it's the other stuff that clouds the joy. So for me, being in medicine, and this is probably true for a lot of folks that work in office settings or customer service type settings. And that's really what medicine is. It's a business, and then it's customer service. Being bogged down by the daily complaints, by the paperwork. For us, it's notes. The notes are never ending. The labs are never ending, dealing with pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, denying what you think you need to do for the health of your patient, making your job hard. All of these things become burdensome. And at some point, whether you're 5, 6, 7, 10 years in, it becomes stressful, and you wake up wondering, am I enjoying this as much as I did when I first started, and why? So physician burnout is a huge reason why a lot of physicians and clinicians and nurses and providers are leaving the field of medicine. They may not necessarily want to stop doing medicine altogether, but they want to find different ways. So for us, when we talk about the book, thinking about quitting medicine, 13 of us, 12 of us are MDs, and one is a psychologist, a PhD. We all talk about what we did to prevent complete burnout. Some of us, I started writing books, and I started to put on events, and that became fun. It was still medically related. The Superwoman Complex is still medical, but it's different. It's something that I'm passionate about because I'm living that. Some of us went on to become NFL cheerleaders. Some of us are bakers. Some of us are life coaches. So, and some of us decided maybe not full-time, but I want to be part-time. Or I've been working as an internal medicine doc, but now I just want to do geriatrics, something that refocuses your passion into what you want to do. So it's all about finding those things, remembering and reminding yourself of what, why I got into a certain field, why I hate it right now, and what can I do differently so that I don't completely burn out. That's the point.
Tapping into your why is so, so important.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and I think that's probably why I started my business too, is that when you create something for yourself or do something new, you suddenly have something to anticipate, something to get excited about.
Yes.
So I really appreciate, all the different things, bakers, cheerleaders. I never even thought about that. Who knows? I got new things to put on the list.
One of them went to just quit medicine and said, I want to be a lawyer, and did that for a while. So, you're not limited. You're not limited.
Yeah. And it is about, when you recognize that and you're not passionate about it, how are you serving the people that you serve?
Right. Excellent point.
What it comes down to. So tell us more about your book. Not just the one that we just talked about, thinking about quitting medicine, but the Superwoman Complex one.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 2 of them now. So tell us a little bit more about them.
Yes, ma'am. So the first one I wrote in 2015, and it's called How to Avoid the Superwoman Complex. All of them are available on Amazon, by the way, hint, hint, but, and
Awesome.
DocSwiner.com. Yes. But, the first book is kind of an introduction into what the syndrome and complex is, the definition, the history behind it, where it came from. And then it lists a lot of signs and symptoms and conditions that are related to it. So I kind of walk you through the medical and emotional components of what it is and what it can do to your body, what it can do to your mental health, and a couple of hints on how you can identify it and fix it. So that's kind of the first book. The second book, The Superwoman Complex, a follow-up visit. Doctors are all about the follow-up. They want to check and see how you're doing later. Is more in depth about, okay, we've defined it. We know what it is. We know what it can do. How are we going to fix it? So it's more treatment-based, more advice on, okay, here are a couple of tips, 12 to 13 tips, like I mentioned, get more sleep, do this, do that, so that you can not feel so burdened by this complex that the majority of us deal with. So that's what it's been about. And it's been kind of my ministry, preaching how to get rid of it so that we don't, always feel down and burdened and depressed or anxious about having to please other people, that we're taking that time, giving women the permission to take out time for self-care is what it's all about.
And I love that. That's the key word. Doc Swiner had said it here. The key word is that we're all waiting for this permission.
Right.
And I find it fascinating that, we often know what we need to do, but we are waiting for someone to give us the permission to say, you know what, you need to take time for yourself.
That's right. That's right.
So how can people stay in touch with you?
So my website, like you mentioned, is DocSwiner.com, but I'm Doc Swiner pretty much everywhere on social media. So find me on Instagram. Instagram is probably my favorite. I like to interact a lot with folks on Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, like you mentioned, Periscope, and I have a blog, DocSwiner.wordpress.com, where I post, articles on topics that I'm interested in a couple of times a month. And then if you ever need me, or if you're interested in self-publishing, because that's something else that I do and teach and consult on, we have our publishing company, Swiner Publishing Company, and please contact me through the website or send me a DM through social media. So Doc Swiner everywhere. You can get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Doc Swiner. We really appreciate it. There is so many nuggets of information, and I don't even know where to start, but self-care is definitely one of the biggest ones. And that sleep component, I think, gets taken for granted so easily.
Yes.
We think if I just do a little bit more, and then people lose track of time once they get in their zone and realize that it's 3 a.m. They got to be up at 6.
Right. Go to sleep.
Yeah. So if you were to give us one last piece of advice, what would that be?
Other than the sleep, I would say, listen to yourself. If you're not happy, if you're losing passion, whether it's in your job, in your relationship, in a task that you're doing, if you're not happy about it, then make the change. Don't feel forced to be in any situation that doesn't bring you joy. Happiness is, I tend to use joy more than happiness. Happiness is more short-lived. Joy is more long-term. If it's not bringing you joy, then change it. If you feel that you're being taken advantage of by a friendship, by a relationship, by your children, if you're feeling that you're being manipulated and it's not a 50-50 relationship or job situation, then make the change. You deserve it. You owe it to yourself to make a change to be more happy.
And everyone has the choice to make that change.
That's right.
So thank you so much for coming on the show. That's a wrap, everyone. With the Millionaire Woman Show, we'd love to hear the nuggets of information that has most impacted you. So you can DM Doc Swiner on social media or through the website, or you can email me at Deborah@deborahkozowski.com, or go on to my website at deborahkozowski.com. There's a contact page. We read them all the time, so we're making sure that we are getting back to you. Go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star high five, write us a review. The more reviews and ratings that there are, the more people can find the show. So we're so grateful that people have been going on there sharing that news, because what it is about these leadership, business, and human potential principles is we're helping people live rich from the inside out. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. And for my message for you is go out and make today great. Have a great day, everyone.